work with quite a vast demographic of people from anywhere in the public service, frontline community workers, you name it, that may struggle with an operational or occupational stress injury. So,
Oh, that's great. We actually were in the meeting today with Mo from Boots on the Ground.
yeah, Mo, we know Mo. We're closely associated with him. He's a good guy. Good
Yeah,
organization for sure.
yeah, lots of really great work. So I think we'll give it a few more minutes. Jason, so are the OSI groups or the OSIS groups still running?
So OSIS is the federal program that was initially created by VAC or delivered through VAC. And I worked for them the first couple of years that I was out of the military and after I finished school and whatnot, and tried my hand at the civilian world, and it just wasn't for me. And I ended up working for OSIS, and their mandate is very narrow, right? Like it's more focused on people who received the operational stress injury while deployed, where OSI is much different. It's anybody from the demographic that you see pictured, and it's even wider than that. But even if they're struggling with normal life stressors on top of their job or their career, OSIS does still exist, but it's no longer delivered through VAC. It's delivered through the transition group with the Canadian.
Okay. Well, we'll have to connect after this workshop.
Absolutely.
I just want to welcome. We have Natalie, Goran, Tamara, and Jeff who've joined us now. Let's see. I'll do a little count. Yeah, so we're still waiting for some people. So maybe we'll still just wait a little bit longer before we jump into things. Oh, there you are. You popped forward. You were in the background before. Okay. Okay. Well, I mean, this will be recorded and we will post it on our website, I believe, after. So if anyone wants to look back over that, if they've missed it, they can do that. So maybe should we just jump in? Team, what are you thinking?
Yeah.
Okay.
Is Dirk online?
Yep.
Okay.
I'm here.
Okay.
Okay. Just trying to bring up my notes here, which are very small. Sorry, bear with me. Okay, so hello everyone. My name is Adrienne Davidson Helgerson. I'm the Director of Operations of the Davidson Institute. We run the Operational Stress Recovery Program, which is what we were formerly kind of known as. So we're going to dive into the modalities and approaches that we use in the Davidson Institute. We work with kind of traditional therapy resistant PTSD in veterans as part of our intensive outpatient program in Vernon, BC. I do want to say that we don't love the word PTSD. We don't really see it as a disorder. We see it more as an injury. So with that, I still will refer to it as PTSD because that's kind of what it's, known as, but just wanted to say that first. I'll give you a little bit of background about our work for those who aren't familiar. So our institute was founded by Dr. Gordon Davidson, who's actually my father. He was a registered psychologist in BC with over 40 years of experience treating first responders and veterans in managing traumatic stress injuries. Dr. Davidson developed a profound understanding of this population and culture throughout his career. And building upon this competence and expertise, he created a comprehensive multidisciplinary treatment program, incorporating elements proven effective in treating PTSD that he found through, the research and through his own work. Sadly, Dr. Davidson passed away in 2018, but his team and family have continued his important work. For about 10 years now, we have solely worked with first responders and veterans who have a PTSD diagnosis, as that's kind of the key to unlocking services, as many will know. In these years, a lot of amazing research has emerged supporting Dr. Davidson and many others' hypotheses, which blend ancient wisdom with contemporary practices from various theoretical approaches and cultures. In fact, Dr. Davidson was instrumental in introducing mindfulness and meditation to the BC Mental Health Commission in the 70s, pioneering a more somatic and holistic approach to mental health. Our approach, though rich in terminology, and I apologize for the therapy speak, follows the trauma-informed practitioner, scholar, advocate, leaders model. So I'll pull up the first slide here. So this is an advanced educational and operational model that is focused on the practical application of scholarly knowledge while effectively meeting the needs of clients whose presenting problems are rooted in a socio-cultural context. In the same vein, we adopt a relational cultural approach that recognizes the crucial role of relationships in well-being. The 5 guiding principles of the trauma-informed protocol are safety, choice, collaboration, trustworthiness, and empowerment. And ensuring that the physical and emotional safety of an individual is addressed is the first important step to providing trauma-informed care. We view clients through a biopsychosocial lens, which suggests that biological, psychological, which entails thoughts, emotions, and behaviors, and social factors, all play a significant role in human functioning in the context of disease or illness. And so we emphasize a respect-focused, somatic-leaning approach, prioritizing methods that engage the nervous system, what is referred to as bottom-up processing, as opposed to top-down. So bottom-up is engaging the nervous system, top-down is more cognitive components. So in our program, we combine traditional talk or cognitive therapy, EMDR, followed by sessions on self-regulation techniques, and they work really well together. We maintain a culturally informed and socially just perspective that respects each person's identity and lived experience, recognizing that our clients are the experts in their lives. We walk alongside our clients, helping clients to find their innate healing capacity, strengths, abilities, and facilitating empowerment, which is a key factor in our approach, as trauma often robs individuals of control. Our approach also involves the REPLAN, more terminology, I apologize, method of treatment planning, which involves building a strong therapeutic relationship, formulating goals of treatment, and then matching the client's goals and presenting concerns with one of the common factors, such as enhancing efficacy or self-esteem. So our small group sizes allow us to adapt and modify our treatment plans based on client feedback, emphasizing autonomy and empowerment. Autonomy is crucial for processing the hard work of therapy, which led us to house participants in individual suites at a nearby lodge rather than a shared residence or hospital setting. This environment, complete with a creek and an atrium full of trees, has been proven to be healing and conducive to our work. Our mission is deeply personal. It's to save lives. We haven't lost a client to suicide who's attended our program yet, and that is statistically significant, meaning we are achieving this important goal. Our clients who have served and sacrificed so much and shown immense courage deserve the utmost respect and best care to help them truly heal on a cellular level, reclaim their power, and step back into the role that drew them to this work in the first place, being of service to others. So I would recommend that you take some notes throughout this workshop with any questions or things that stood out to you, as we'll follow each presentation with a Q&A period. And to enhance the accessibility of our workshops, like I mentioned before, we'll be recording the sessions and posting them on our website. Some clips may make it to social media platforms of the presenters. We will be keeping the participants kind of out of social media. We encourage everyone to participate in the Q&A, and we also want to just remind you to be mindful of what you share, considering that recordings are public. Your disclosures could have an impact on yourself and others, so just share thoughtfully. If you wish to ask a question during the Q&A but prefer to remain more anonymous, you can always just turn your camera off or keep it off, or submit a question in the chat. So now I will pass the floor to our clinical director and Dr. Tina Rochford. She will outline the workshops in this series. And following her, Dirk Terpstra will discuss our somatic approach with self-regulation techniques. And lastly, Dirk will demonstrate a simple technique for achieving a coherent state, which I hope you'll find beneficial. Thanks for all your time and your participation. And now over to Dr. Rochford.
And welcome to those, by the way, who joined us in the meantime. So happy to have you.
Great. Thank you, Adrian. Could you please advance the slide?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Thank you very much. As Adrian said, my name is Dr. Tina Rochford Davidson. You may have noticed a bit of a thread here. Yes, we are a family, and Dirk is an honorary member of our family. I'm the matriarch, I guess. Our whole goal in putting this together was we've done so much trauma work since 2015. And prior to that, many of us have worked in this area. And we learned so much based on research. We're always keeping abreast of the research, best practices. Everything we do has been peer reviewed, and then we operationalize it. And we really wanted to share it with people dealing with OSIs, support people, providers, and so on. So that's our goal here. And I'm kind of excited about doing that. We all actually really love what we do and are happy to share it with you. Adrian and I did a rough calculation in terms of how many years experience our team has combined, and it was actually over 100 years. So take that as you will. We're either really old or we've been around a long time or really experienced. So just one of the first things we're going to be talking about, I'll just say a few words about each webinar that will be coming up. And these are elements from our program. So the first piece is, Adrian, did you have more on this slide? Intro to OSIs? Sorry.
No.
Anyway, so my first presentation typically is about an overview of OSIs, which are operational stress injuries. And what I usually do is describe the umbrella of OSIs, under which there's depression, anxiety, adjustment disorders, and substance use disorders. And I just like to point that out. I also go into the neurobiology of operational stress injuries. A lot of people, we find the clients who come to us are not really aware that your brain is altered, your prefrontal cortex isn't operating properly, the amygdala, kind of the processing, the alarm center of your brain is actually shrunk, and the hippocampus, the library, the storage where memories are kept and retrieved is actually also reduced in size. We know this from looking at PET scans. So I introduced the notion that your brain is actually altered with OSIs, and the kinds of things we are going to be working on are somatic strategies, which aim to essentially rewire the brain, as kind of maybe Frankenstein as that sounds, but that's based on best practices. So thanks. Could you advance it, Adrian, please? So one of the things we'll be talking about is EMDR. So that's eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. That's what the acronym stands for. EMDR has become the gold standard in treating trauma. I've been in this field a long time, probably 15 years or so ago. It has, we used to do more things like desensitization, talk therapy, cognitive work, but that's very much switched to somatic strategies. So EMDR involves taking traumatic memories, if you will. There's a metaphor here of the linen closet. We take a memory, we examine it, we reprocess it, and reprocessing actually is based on the whole notion of binaural beats, binaural stimulation. So if some of you who are familiar with EMDR may be familiar with the light bar, with the tappers, with the tapping. Actually, historically, when you think about anything that is binaural, walking, we rock babies, a lot of cultures use drumming. So a lot of this is intuitive, and now we have a whole school of therapy, and it's based on some really good research. Anyway, and so what we do is we take these traumatic memories, a few of them that are symbolic, essentially. Sorry about that. Process them, And then at the end of the day, the memories are stored metaphorically in a linen cupboard or the back centers of your brain. And they're there, they're part of your narrative, your story, but they're not going to come back to trigger you, to haunt you. So that's just a metaphor in terms of EMDR. Next slide, please, Adrian. Trauma yoga, really interesting. Our yoga therapist is trauma informed. This is different from regular yoga. There's a lot of research here in terms of a trauma yoga group and a control group. And you can see from the two pie charts here that with trauma informed yoga, 52% no longer met the criteria for PTSD. And similarly with the control group, 21% no longer met the criteria of PTSD following sessions of trauma yoga. So there's a fair bit of research on this, and we find our clients really love it. It's calming, it's relaxing, and it does help, again, with body movements that process trauma. Next slide, please. Introduction to HeartMath. I'm venturing into Dirk's area here, so I won't say a whole lot about this. He's the expert. But one of the key things that we do is self-regulation. HeartMath is basically bringing oneself into coherence. And you can see somebody who's stressed, for example, how jagged their, if we were to run an EKG or something like that, what it would look like. At the bottom, you can see these nice sort of smooth sine waves. That's somebody in coherence. So it's to do with breath work. It's to do with different kinds of emotions that one brings in. It's not about heart rate per se or stress levels per se. It's about heart rate variability, the beat to beat variability, which is synonymous with resilience. And Dirk will say more about this. This is his area. Aromatherapy. Really interesting. We've added this to our program, hugely popular, hugely effective. As many of you are probably aware, our olfactory sense, or our sense of smell, fastest connection to the brain. There's a fair bit of research, including a January 2017 review of aromatherapy for depression. And you can see on the slide here the results of 12 randomized clinical trials, and it really did make a difference. The bottom of the slide, you can see some of the particular scents or aromas that are very effective and most frequently used. Lavender, I think we're all pretty familiar with, and then goes down from rose, and so I can't read that well, chromium, and down to rosemary. So again, this is all research based and a really popular and interesting new field. Next slide, please. Something called the David device. What the David device is, and Dirk will perhaps go into this, is the acronym actually stands, it's a type of neuroentrainment or neurofeedback. So what we get are the feel-good chemicals, if you will, the reuptake of serotonin and endorphins. And so it helps with all kinds of things. It helps with pain, helps with general relaxation, sense of well-being, sleep, just a lot of things, calms the nervous system down. And there's a mention here too that it also can mediate with some of the pain circuits in the brain. So it's helpful with people with chronic pain, which I'll talk about in a moment. Thank you. Art therapy. Expressive therapies are great. Again, it's another modality which really resonates with a lot of people. You don't need to be an artist. We do all kinds of things with art therapy, sometimes mask work, the inside of the mask versus the outside of the mask, collage, the searching, the cutting, the selecting, the reassembling. And there's a lot of metaphors, painting, sculpting, very powerful and modality. And we have trained art therapists on staff here. Thank you. Advanced self-regulation. This is breathing strategies, body trauma release exercises, things like that. Again, this is Dirk's area, but we will take it to the next level as we get further along in the program. Adventure therapy. So this is kind of like nature therapy, if you will. We all know how wonderful it is to be out in nature. It makes us feel good. We resonate. It's calming. We're essentially at one with the natural world. It's also challenging ourselves, helping with the sense of mastery, because so often with trauma, we feel disempowered, we feel weak, we don't feel incredibly competent. So doing things like maybe going on a bit of a challenging hike, or climbing rocks or whatever. We feel that sense of mastery, skiing down a run, the social connection. And it's a great experience. Cognitive processing, this is the cognitive piece where our thought, it's called CPT. It's a very structured kind of psychotherapy. So this part is looking at our thoughts, because our thoughts tend to determine our emotions, determine our behaviors, determine our experience in the world. So if we challenge those thoughts, which maybe have become maladaptive, for example, the world is an unsafe place. Perhaps it was back then, but that's not true now. So challenging the thoughts, kind of rewiring, looking at what's more current, more adaptive, that can also be a piece that's helpful. Peer support. As humans, we're wired for connection, for attachment. And unfortunately, with trauma, what happens is we retreat, we sever our social connections, we don't go out, big box stores are our worst enemy. We don't socialize. And unfortunately, it works because we see less and less of people, we experience less and less of the world, we just isolate at home, and that works. It's very protective, but the world becomes smaller and smaller and smaller until you're very much alone, and that is not a good place for most people to be. So our groups help to break that, build that. The people build wonderful connections which carry on for months, even years after the program. Pain and PTSD. Gosh, most of the people we see here have chronic pain. Granted, many people have been injured. They've sustained injuries, during military career, during policing career, they absolutely have been hurt. But even after recovery from the actual injury, the pain carries on. And I find this quite fascinating in terms of like, what is this all about? So just in a nutshell, what kind of happens? So, say we hit our thumb with a hammer. That sensation travels up a motor neuron to a pain receptor in the brain. Our brain decides how we're going to interpret it, maybe interprets it as pain. The thumb heals, and then it's all gone. With chronic pain, you have an injury, the sensation travels up the neurons, hits the pain receptors in the brain, but there's all these little glial cells all around that are just waiting to catch fire. So what might start as an initial flame becomes a little campfire, becomes a bonfire, becomes a forest fire. And now you've got this huge mess to untangle, and it becomes this negative feedback loop. There's lots of ways to approach this, and joy, play, gratitude, physical activity, lots of things can help to basically activate our internal pharmacy, if you will, our natural pharmacy. Next one. Excuse me. Culturally informed care, really, really important that those of us who work with trauma understand trauma and the groups with whom we are working. We need to understand military culture. We need to understand, policing culture. We need to understand the culture of women, the culture of men. We're all, come from different places. And so that was a concern that was raised on a meeting actually based out of Ottawa this morning, that the lack of cultural competence of those of us who work with different groups is very problematic. And, for example, it's mandated for those of us who work with First Nations Health Authority, we have to take a 9-hour credit course in cultural competence. And I think that's really important, so that we're speaking the same language, so that we understand the context that our clients are coming from and their lived experience. Sensory deprivation therapy or float tanks. Sorry, sensory deprivation sounds a bit like torture, but what this is suggesting, we have float tanks that we use in Kelowna, and it's kind of cool. Essentially, so floating enhances and promotes activity in the right hemisphere of the brain. That kind of helps put memories in context and the awareness of now. And it also releases, again, the feel-good hormones such as endorphins. And historically, for example, after battle, warriors or soldiers would float in the Dead Sea. And I'm presuming they didn't use the term PTSD, of course, in that era, but that was to decompress after battle. So this, again, a lot of these things have some interesting historical perspective. Mindfulness and nature therapy. Again, there's a term which I just learned about recently called biophilia. And I think we all know that, and that's our innate need, not only to affiliate with others, but the natural world. I'm just looking at my window here. I see a few trees, some buildings, some mountains and snow in the distance. But we all know that it just feels so good to get out in nature, whatever that might be. It's a beautiful scene here. And animals. Many of the people who come to our programs bring their pets and or service animals and birds and other creatures. So, and it's quite lovely to have them. You know, animals are very, very attuned to the nervous system of people, and they can be very calming. So again, it's something that we really encourage. We spend as much time as possible outdoors, given the weather. Goal setting, starting with the end in mind. You know, one question that a therapist posed lately, I thought was a great one, is where do you want to be in 5 years? What do you want your life to look like? And then once you have that established, well, then what do you need to do now to get to your goal? So it helps us to create a vision of what we want our life to be like. I think we all want some sort of sense of meaning. We're just not quite sure what that might look like. And more importantly, starting with the beginning and how do we get there, breaking it down to small steps. Moral injury, this has become a huge issue with PTSD. This slide shows the intersection of moral injury, PTSD. The symptoms are similar. Many of the things that one has to do in the line of duty really fly in the face of core values, if you will. However, they have to be done. And at the end of the day, it tends to leave us with just a sense of feeling incredibly upset, you know, that we've really gone against our internal sense of self. But some of these things are really hard to talk about and hard to process. So this is a piece that we focus on more and more and help people to unpack, forgive themselves, understand the situation, and heal from. Sleep. I think in all the years I've been doing this, I have met 2 people who maintain they sleep well. Virtually everybody with trauma, with PTSD, has a problem with sleep. So why is that? Well, the autonomic nervous system is wired, it's fired up, it's going all the time. Essentially, you're in fight or flight constantly, and you can imagine how exhausting that is. And it really impacts sleep. Lots of sleep disorders, actually sleep onset insomnia, early morning awakening, restless legs, sleep apnea. Virtually everybody has sleep issues. Like, you know, in any group, there's a number of people who've got the CPAP machines with them. So, and it also affects the balance between non-REM sleep and REM sleep. So REM is where we process events of the day. It's very dysregulated with trauma due to, you know, the hormones that mediate sleep are very, they're not working properly. And so you're not getting your REM, which is where you might normally process events of the day and ultimately process traumatic events. So you may log some hours here and there, but you're going to wake up feeling restless. Nightmares are common. What's happening there is you get a surge of cortisol in the middle of a sleep stage where you're dreaming, but it wakes you up and you're, you know, sometimes even sleep paralysis. Is very terrifying, very common with PTSD, but there are things that we can do around that. Financial wellness, having trauma or PTSD diagnosis can cause real financial issues. People lose their careers, there may be pension issues, there may be role changing. Money, you know, it's something we don't necessarily like to talk about, but it is a part of our life and how we make our lives work. So how we respond to financial issues is important, and we're not always thinking that clearly as well when our nervous system are so dysregulated. Music therapy. Music is very, very powerful. Historically, there's certain kinds of classical music that have shown to be very soothing, very calming. And so actually it's kind of interesting. Some of the contemporary music, like rap, that kind of thing, is very discordant. It doesn't resonate with us. It's not calming, you know, literally, and we can show that physiologically in our bodies. So sleep is, you know, we all know that there's different maybe tunes, kinds of music that remind us of happy, peaceful times and can boost our mood. So we utilize music therapy. We have a psychiatrist who comes and is available for a Q&A. She's really great in talking about trauma in general. She'll do answer questions about medications, med reviews, and also talks about how to build a positive relationship with psychiatrists, particularly as part of one's healthcare team, and how to navigate the system. She's really great that way. It is important. This is, treating trauma, PTSD is a team approach, and typically a psychiatrist is part of that equation. Linking awareness or equine therapy. We have an absolutely wonderful equine therapist, and equine therapy is an integral part of most trauma programs. There's something about the nervous system of a horse and of people that connects. Is quite interesting, quite healing, quite magical. So it's called equine therapy, but it's actually much, much more than that. It's an incredibly healing environment. When we go out to, her name is Lucia, her ranch out in Armstrong, beautiful property, the horses, the animals, there's a lot of kind of amazing healing things that happen there. Mastery and competence. I guess that's about hobbies, doing things. Again, if we do things, it helps enhance our sense of being competent, and is in essence a natural antidepressant. And I think as one of the organizations, I think it might be Wounded Warriors, that helps with hobby development. If you're interested in music, they'll buy you a guitar, or a fishing rod or something like that. We actually have fly fishing as part of our program. It's a bit of a binaural thing, but it's also hobby development. That's really important, because so often with trauma, we've lost the things that give us joy. It's called anhedonia. We don't have hobbies or interests anymore, and that's a part of having a whole rich life. Nutrition, really important. As we learn more and more about nutrition and diet and how that heals our body, heals our brain. We've actually got a fun way of doing this. We actually go to an actual house with a kitchen. We have our registered nutritionist there who teaches about nutrition. At the same time, we all help prep a meal, and then we share the meal together, break bread essentially. So it's a really fun way to do it, and there's a lot of great information that's imparted. So a lot of people have defaulted to maybe not particularly healthy means of eating, and we just want to convey that, as opposed to in a lecture style. Again, it's very hands-on, and it's a joining experience too with the group.
And I just wanted to just point out that these are the workshops in the series that we'll be doing. So for a lot of these workshops, they will be individual sessions, and we'll have a lot of guest speakers, like, our nutritionist will come on, and we'll do some more interactive kind of workshops as well. It's all based off of what we do in our program. So that's why you hear Tina kind of talking about what we do in the program, but it's also what we'll be doing in the workshops.
Cryotherapy. This is actually really cool. This is cold therapy, and we have a cryotherapy place we go to out at Sparkling Hills Spa, where people get to experience this. This has been done in Europe and maybe historically for ages. And increasingly you may hear about cold plunges, people going in the lake and so on in the winter. So again, there's more and more research about cryotherapy and improving one's mental health, reducing inflammation, and it's really interesting. So this is one of the things that we have incorporated. As you can probably tell, our goal is to introduce everybody to a range of somatic kinds of experiences, and at the end of the day, you can pick and choose which are working for you and which don't. Kindness. Again, some pretty interesting neurobiology and kindness volunteerism. It not only makes us feel good when we do things for others, but it actually helps to sort of rewire our nervous system and connect with other people. So we have a bit of a psycho ed piece on that, and then we actually do something. For example, we'll make up kindness bags, full of supplies, toiletries, and it's winter now, so toques and socks and things like that. And we will distribute them to homeless people or to shelters, that kind of thing. So, and the really interesting part of that, though, everybody includes a card written to They don't know who the recipient of these bags are going to be. I don't know what's written on the cards, but I find people take a very long time to write these cards. And what I've heard on the other end, for example, the mission where I sometimes drop off these bags, is that the recipients spend a long time reading these cards. You know, the contents are helpful and nice, especially in the cold weather, but something about what's written in the cards, and I'm guessing it's the human to human connection. I see you, I hear you, I feel you, I have your back kind of thing, that is very special. So that's kind of a cool thing to be a part of. Relationships. This is a piece that I do. I love doing it. And I actually call it creating a great relationship. And I utilize a lot of the Gottman principles about, you know, creating love maps, the foundational base of relationships, friendship, fondness and admiration, turning toward each other, how to solve problems, creating a shared sense of meaning. There's a fair bit on that. I find it's very interactive. It's a lot of fun. And again, the goal is to help people have the kind of relationship they want. You know, there are some choices around that, because trauma does really, it's kind of like the third person in the relationship, if you will. You're banging up against it all the time. It can be hard to kind of get to each other. Intimacy. We have actually a wonderful psychologist who is very rare. He has a master's degree in sexology, and he does a great presentation on intimacy, big picture, which is very well received, because again, with trauma, intimacy gets impacted because of the trauma, the medications, all kinds of things. Couples kind of lose that kind of connection, and he addresses that in a very sensitive and very caring way. Post-traumatic growth. This is really important, because essentially, you know, people come to us, they come through our 6-week program, and we have an aftercare program, and then it's what next? You know, what am I going to do? And so post-traumatic growth is life after trauma, essentially. Have I learned something from this? Can I make a better life? Can I, you know, look after myself, the people I care about in the world better? Can I be of service to others? So this is a pretty interesting piece. We often have peers, people who've gone through our program, graduates, if you will, come and talk about this, how their lives have changed and what they're doing.
Okay, so that's the end of the workshops. And so now we'll pass it over to Dirk.
Okay. Dirk Terpstra, I'll let you introduce yourself, Dirk. Dirk is an amazing human being, and we feel very privileged to have him as part of our team.
Thanks so much. Yeah, maybe we could go from presentation mode, just because I won't be any slides here. And thanks for the intro. I believe we're all amazing human beings, so that's for sure. Quick coherence, I'll get to that in a little bit. Let me shift my screen here. What you've heard so far, and when I look at this and I think, wow, you know, I'm so grateful to be part of this, because what we're doing comes all down to a couple of elemental things that humans need. You've heard already Adrian talk about collaboration, about connection. Dr. Rochford speaks a lot about connection. And so when we look at trauma, then we often look at the effects of trauma, and which are often perceived obviously as negative. But where Dr. Rochford ended this, was the post-traumatic growth. And that's usually where we start actually our sessions with, because there is something to the suffering that we're going through that has actually a deeper impact on us as human beings. And they feel the connection that we are building here, because there's one thing that we know as no other, is that, and Adrian already mentioned it, it's the safety and the connection that are two elemental things in the process of bringing ourselves back into a more balanced state. And we're not speaking here about, you know, being broken or having this burden, you know, sitting our shoulders or on our chest, and that no change is possible, because that's usually what it is. You know, we have we are being labeled with PTSD, but there's no change possible. And we see the opposite. And so when we talk about somatic approach, is that what we do is I got trained at the Institute of HeartMath in California, where we do research about the intelligence of the heart, and how important that is relating also to the activity of our nervous system. I've been trained by Bessel van der Kolk, who got really famous by writing his book, The Body Keeps the Score. And the simplicity of when you would open up a body, a person who has been traumatized by either a car accident, by a systematic abuse in earlier years, for example, or a war veteran, when you look at the changes in the system, you will see the same changes happening in the chemistry in our body. And that's what we look at. Dr. Rochford already was talking about the changes in the brain. And the changes in the brain is so profound, is that especially when the body is under threat, under intense threat, with such an elevated emotion that it can be life-threatening, there is a protection mechanism kicking in. And that protection mechanism is innate in each one of us. And there is something happening in the brain, for example, that a certain area of the brain that you're currently using to make sense of what I'm all saying right now is the prefrontal cortex that shuts down an activity just for you not to completely go insane by, all that you experience with your system. So that's a protective mechanism. The only problem is when that intensity of emotions and the threat level is so high, is that the brain needs some help after the event has occurred to get back on board. And you already heard, Dr. Rochford talk about the David device. It's audio, visual, brainwave entrainment, where we begin to help activate the frontal lobe of the human that we work with. And what we see is then there is a diminished activity in the emotional centers of the brain, and where we see overall a more calm state of the body, where people either fall asleep or they kind of, after the session, they come out of that and they say, I can't believe how calm I feel, or a fog has been lifting. These are the ways that we feel in our body that there is a change. But what really happens behind the scenes, so to speak, in our body, in the chemistry, that's what we always explain to everyone that we work with, because we want you to understand what is really happening in the body. Because if there's one thing that you need to understand, it's your body, because your body is your business. It's your vessel that you live in. Another very elemental thing is when we experience stress, when we experience trauma, or anything that is out of our balanced state, what we'll notice is that the rhythm of our heart changes. And Dr. Rochford already showed that slide, with the very incoherent heart rhythm that you could see in the top, and a more coherent rhythm. We measure people's heart rhythms first as a baseline to see where they're at. I've been trained to also look deeper into, it's a very intimate reading. I've been trained to look deeper into what's going on with this person's system, because no matter what the story is, we are looking at the changes in the body related to the story, the trauma story in this case. And what we see is when the heart rhythm changes, it affects our autonomic nervous system and our brain, and even our hormonal system. And our autonomic nervous system regulates 99% of all of our internal functions. So every time, and this is when I started this work, when I was kind of being pulled off the street and adopted by, as in the family, so to speak, metaphorically, where I would be a fool in all of those years not to see patterns. When people have experience emotional challenges, emotional trauma, I see over and over again, I see the same physical changes, chronic pain, fibromyalgia, people get more forgetful, often digestive disorders, and so on. So when the autonomic nervous system is being dysregulated, we have a lot of the symptoms in our body that we experience. The issue is that most of the care that people receive, especially in our Western, healthcare system, is that we look at the symptoms and we try to reduce the symptoms. And what we do in our program, we go deeper to the root of the issue, what's happening at the core of our system, and we learn to self-regulate our energy levels. We learn to self-regulate our heart rhythm. Therefore, we change the state of our brain. We work with the device in order to further optimize the brain, because in the end, the brain is the executive center and it releases neurochemistry into the body, and then you feel a certain way and you say, I feel depressed, or I feel stressed, or I feel highly anxious. But that is the end result of a system that is not safe. And Adrian already mentioned it, and I'm so happy that you mentioned that, because the most important thing is that we do here, especially in the first couple of days when we work with people, is to help establish safety. And of course, we cannot make people feel safe, because we can be in a completely safe environment and people can still feel very anxious or unsafe. But what we notice in the group, again, there's the connection part that Dr. Rochford also mentioned. We begin to create, we already mentioned the word coherence. There is a coherence that we feel in the group. And it's almost that our systems give permission to other people to feel more safe. And one of the things that I always do when I work with people is I come in a room and I am in a very coherent state. And that is being picked up by the nervous system of other people, that shows in their heart rhythm. And there is one exercise that I wanted to do today, which can actually fairly quickly, maybe not initially, because if it's new to you, change your heart rhythm and therefore also change the state of your brain and your entire nervous system. If there's one thing, and there's a lot of evidence about that, there's a lot of studies being done, no matter what smart program you offer, no matter what it is in terms of work, therapy, any of the work, if the nervous system is still highly active in a fight or flight mode, no matter what you do, it's ineffective. So all the work that I do and everything Dr. Rochford already shared and all the modalities, it all comes down to the same thing. Reduce the hyperactivity in your nervous system, because then you give your body a message like, hey, we're safe. And the body has a natural intelligence to start repairing what it needs to be, what needs to be repaired. So what happens when you deeply breathe in? There's many, there's probably hundreds of breathing techniques, but there is one. This is not specifically a breathing technique. It's a way to help change the rhythm of your heart. And when the rhythm changes, it sends information through the vagus nerve to your brain. Your brain will change, and then your entire body will change. And so if you pay attention to how you currently breathe, potentially it's very superficial. We don't breathe a lot naturally. We don't sit here and slowly, deeply breathe. So what happens when you deeply breathe is you actually, when you breathe in, your heart rate goes up. And when you exhale fully, if we already fully exhale, our heart rate slows down. And when we begin to slowly breathe in deeper and exhale deeper and slower, what we see on the monitor, if we would hook you up, we see that the heart rhythm starts to change. We see that there is more heart rate variability. That's what you could see briefly on that one slide. There's more heart rate variability, and heart rate variability, that's the capacity of your heart, your entire system, to adapt, to adjust situations. In other words, it's a reflection of your resilience. And that's an incredible part, whether it's emotional resilience, whether it's physical resilience that we talked about, whether it's more spiritual resilience, how able are you to further process the information that comes at you on a day-to-day basis. So what I want to invite you to do is to just breathe a little slower and deeper as you would normally do. We breathe in for about 5 seconds. You can even count. And you exhale fully for about 5 seconds. And you repeat that process. You don't stop. And as you're deeply breathing and fully exhaling, and you repeat that process, something is already shifting. Well, while you're doing that, is it for you possible to either place the hand on your chest or to just feel that air flow through your chest? Imagine bringing all of the awareness to your chest and just notice yourself breathing. When thoughts come up, maybe just park them on the side for now and say, I will deal with you later. And you go back, you refocus with the deep breathing. You don't have to do anything particularly. Don't be afraid that you don't do it right. And you're more in your head. When your mom gave birth to you, she never explained how to breathe, but that's the first thing you did after birth. So we know how to breathe. It's just learning to get out of our own way. And as we sit here and we breathe deeply, we give a message to our nervous system that we're safe. And it's very easy to trick the nervous system as what happens with trauma, the opposite way. And as we breathe and we can feel that air flow through our chest, maybe it's even possible for us to sit here together and say, actually, it's pretty cool that we have the technology to come together. Maybe you have even, you can genuinely feel grateful for that, to be here, to connect with other human beings, and just to feel yourself being present, just for a couple of more seconds. And if we would show your heart rhythm currently on a screen, we see incredible changes. Your nervous system slows down. Your brain activity gets more regulated. Your hormonal system changes. Excess cortisol is being absorbed by a batch of hormones that's being released. It's called DHEA naturally, increased by 100% when we do this for a few minutes. And so we tune in to our inner pharmacology. And most of the things that Dr. Rochford already introduced us to is that we help people to tune in to something that is available, but that we have forgotten in the busyness of life, in the intensity of trauma, and in the incredible and seemingly never-ending information flow in our society. Everything that we watch on TV, everything that we see, we go back within, we measure it, we measure the changes. And after that, you come to the conclusion and you say, like, it's incredible that I didn't even realize this was possible. And that is actually, in a nutshell, the foundation of our approach. So I want to thank Dr. Rochford. I want to thank Adrian. Thank you for your presence. I hope to see you back sooner than later.
Thanks so much,
Thank
Dirk.
you. So I think we'll open it up to questions now. Feel free to just unmute yourself, ask it verbally. You can post something in the chat. You can put your hand up first. It's whatever you like. We just would like to open the floor so people can kind of connect and discuss. Don't be shy. Yes, Jason.
Just a question with regards to the upcoming workshops and further information on these sessions. We have a lot of, I'll say, peer supporters, peer facilitators in our groups that run these groups, and all this information would be very beneficial to them, because when they speak to the peers that come to group that are not in as good of a place as they are, because not everybody's in a place for peer group, but not everybody's in a place to facilitate that group either. Is there a way that we can have that resource provided to them, like access for them to come into this? And is there a limited number of people? I know you mentioned earlier, Adrian, that there was about 25 people that was the cap for this today.
Yeah.
And I'm
So
just wondering if that's the norm for these sessions.
No, so you know what? That was just kind of the Zoom license or something that we had, and so we just wanted to kind of keep it small and intimate for the first one, but we can certainly make it available to more people. And in fact, we actually have Dr. Rochford and Dirk used to go to the OSIS groups and speak about these things. So yeah, I think that's a really important collaboration. We'd love to do that.
Okay, perfect. And with regards to, I'll say, do you guys operate similarly to organizations like Edgewood? Do people go for weeks at a time, and is it an inpatient treatment offer, or is it all strictly virtually online?
Yeah, so it's actually it's intensive outpatient program is the classification, but it's more of a residential setting because we have all of the participants staying at a lodge, which is about a 5-minute walk away. So there's more privacy and autonomy than an inpatient or residential setting, but there's also more a little more security because we only deal with this one lodge. They know our program, they know our staff, they get to know our participants. We do check-ins like just by text and telephone at 6 and 9 every night. So there's a little bit more like supervision, if you will, for people that need added support. But our program, our main program is a 6-week program. So it's 2 weeks in Vernon at our clinic. And then it's 2 weeks home for a reintegration period, practice the skills learned in real life. And then they come back for the remaining 2-week block. So it's 4 weeks in total in the clinic, but there is a couple therapy sessions and other kind of homework, if you will, during the break. So that's our main program. And then people have access to like a 6-month aftercare program, a 2-week in-person follow-up program. We have a 1-week couples program in person as well. We do most of our offerings are in person right now. We're trying to expand them to make it just more accessible through online because it's pretty difficult for people to get access through VAC, but we are VAC approved and VAC does fund all of the participants to come here. It's just a little bit difficult for some people to get that funding. So
That was going to be my next question, was about funding, but there's some other questions, so I'll ask later.
I just wanted to add in there, we do, with the pandemic, we actually switched gears on about 3 days and offered the whole thing virtually. And that's always available every program. And it's not uncommon to have people tapping in virtually. We'd ironed out most of the kinks. So people do mindfulness walks with their phones and things like that. So that is an option, say, for people who live remotely, or often people who've got responsibilities with farms or small children. Coming here is ideal, but if you can't do that, we want it to be accessible and eliminate barriers. So.
Oh, and then we have a message in the chat from Claire. She said, Dirk, it would be helpful if you had videos of yourself demonstrating the breathing techniques. Dirk, can you see that message? Yeah, it is a lot of info, and I want to acknowledge that. And it was kind of difficult to, everything is so complex. It can be simplified, but we also don't want to oversimplify. So this was a ton of information, just an overview of what we will be hoping to achieve and go through over the coming workshops. So each workshop will be, I think, a little bit more simple because we'll have the time to dedicate to one topic. So but we can send out information. Dirk, I think you do have videos like demonstrating breathing techniques, right? That we could send out. I know you've recordings and. Oh, are you muted? Sorry, you're muted.
Sorry, yeah, typically I replied briefly. Typically what we do is we demonstrate it ourselves, not necessarily through videos, but we do that live, demonstrations, and have people practice that. And as I replied, this is just like an introduction to all of that. And so we dive deeper into that for sure, because it's a lot of information. I fully agree. I also wanted to briefly reply to Goran Kurt, about the neurofeedback. We're very familiar with that. The interesting part is that you've seen already, a whole scope of modalities that we work with. The interesting part with the neurofeedback is that many of the veterans feel very challenged by that. It's a task that they're not always up to. And what we do is we go one level deeper, and as we go to the heart and we allow through the rhythm of the heart, the changes in the rhythm of the heart address the brain in a more natural and a more gentle way, instead of output affecting the changes of the brain. So that's the best answer that I can give you in short to your question. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, and then Ryan has mentioned that funding has become much more difficult to secure with PCVRS taking over the VAC rehab program, and that he's been advocating with PCVRS for 6 months plus. And yeah, this is a common theme that we're seeing, and we've been addressing this with folks in Ottawa, like in the meeting this morning. And we are there are people that are taking those concerns seriously, and we hope that it will change and get easier. There's definitely a lot of bumps, but yeah, I mean, hopefully that gets easier. And we really try to help people as much as possible, because that's the advocacy piece that's really important to us. We really want to help people as much as possible to get that funding. Yeah, it doesn't come without challenges. And then Francis, Claire shares, it is so much information, videos, a YouTube would be so helpful to those who need or require reinforcement, as in PTSD brain. We are terribly resistant to changes of any kind. Yeah, no, I would love to share some more resources. I'll figure out a way to do that through email, and we'll send everyone a list of some of our resources. We'll try to not flood people with information. I do see that we are going over time, but I'm okay for time. So if whoever wants to just stay and chat a little bit longer, we'll let it run a little bit longer. If there's any more questions.
I was just going to ask a quick question. Is this occupational stress recovery care? Is it only for veterans, or do you guys deal with first responders, frontline public safety, etc.? And if so, are you connected with VAC or WCBs?
Yeah, so unfortunately, we would love to, and we've made attempts to connect with organizations outside of Veterans Affairs, but it's, I think, primarily because we are in the private sector. There's just that, we can only do so much, for free, and so it's difficult for us to find ways to do that. But we definitely would if there was opportunities to. It's just VAC is the only one that really funds people to go to multidisciplinary clinics right now.
If we connect after it, maybe that's something that we can talk about. Not that I have strings to pull or anything like that, but we have reached out and we've spoke with WCB in Alberta, and I'm not sure about OSI Camp BC, but I know that there are lots of, I'll say, peers, clients who come to us that are looking for places like this to go.
Yeah, we get questions all the time, like, do you accept WCB and whatever? And there's no, like, we don't know what the path is to doing that. So if you have any ideas, we'll definitely love to pick your brain about that. The system really likes to just put everyone in little buckets, right? They don't know how to really address these multidisciplinary programs.
There is also, just to mention, we do have financing options available for people, and the odd person is taking advantage of that. But unfortunately, active duty RCMP, it's a totally different funding source. They've got their own kind of places they like to send people, and BC Ambulance, things like that. So we get, as agents, that we get approached often. I think this program would be great for all kinds of groups of first responders, but it seems that they prefer to fund the big drug treatment centers and individual counseling, if you will, which is kind of unfortunate. But we're ready, willing, and able to do it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
There's an honor ranch. Grand Kurt says that there is an honor ranch near Ashcroft that is meant for vets, first responders, does various programs for therapies. Yeah, you know, that there are quite a few like programs across Canada, and they're all quite different. And so I'm not familiar with, oh, actually I think I have heard of that. Is that by Wounded Warriors? I know Wounded Warriors has some kind of ranch program. But yeah, there is quite a few. They're all quite different. And so I'm not sure. I think we kind of are unique in our approach of the somatic kind of focus.
Yeah, hey there, it's Goran here. Figure it's easier to chat. Yeah, it's an honor ranch. It was established about a couple of years ago, and it's spearheaded by the Honor House from New Westminster. Yeah, so they do various things, and any first responder or vet that is in a similar nature, so to speak, is able to go through application process, and it's free of charge if accepted. And yeah, it's a beautiful 160-acre ranch, and it's quite beautiful. Speaking of getting out in nature for various reasons, and I think honestly that it's not used quite enough. And I think the person who initiated, who was the honorary colonel, Alan DeGenoa from 15th Field Regiment in Vancouver, is trying to get the word out a bit more for that. And if need be, I can definitely send you his contact info. I go there from time to time to volunteer, you know, like fencing, various tasks, etc. And that's been very helpful for me actually in terms of therapy.
Goran, I have heard a little bit about it. My understanding is it's kind of like a retreat center where people can go and retreat, you know, kind of heal and so. But I'm not. Does it have like actual like therapeutic programming? Or is it a place to just, like you said, experience nature, do some fencing, things like that?
No, absolutely. So what they've done is they've built 9 cabins in the area, so people can actually go there and stay. I think through Alan and Craig, who is the individual tasked for the Ashcroft or the Honor Ranch specific, is they're always looking for hosts such as yourself to take a group out and do various things that you guys do. So they've been different aspects of it, including horses, skills, whatever it takes that's relevant to be therapeutic for first responders and veterans, etc. Yeah, they're planning to build actually 9 more cabins in the near future. They've been running off of solar. They have a massive lodge, and they've recently brought in the BC Hydro, so they have heat, the whole 9 yards.
Yeah, I'm looking at it now. It looks beautiful. And, you know, that's actually the exact thing that we've been wanting to do for a long time, is having cabins, because the residential setting where you're just all in one house is too intimate. And so little cabins in a rural setting, I think, is just like the ideal setting. So we'd be really interested in an introduction if you were able to do an email introduction.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Absolutely. I'll send you Alan's contact info, and he's a great individual. He's, like I said, honorary colonel for one of the local units. He's a short Italian guy, very funny, and very personable individual. I'm sure he'd be happy to talk to you.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. You're welcome.
And thanks, Jason. We'll definitely connect. Okay. So I think with that, maybe we will wrap it up unless we have any more. You know what, Claire, I was working on that today. I have a directory of different resources, like different programs and whatever, and it hasn't gotten live on our website, but we're definitely on the same line of thinking there. VTN actually has a resource list on their website, which is is pretty comprehensive. The Veteran Transition Network. Great suggestion. Thanks. Okay, well, I think we will wrap it up. Thank you so much, everyone who came today, and we will be doing these bi-weekly. We still need to determine the exact timing, but we'll send out emails. So if you get on our email list, then you will be able to stay informed about the comings and goings of the program. And yeah, we really just want to thank everyone who's still here for participating, and hopefully we'll see you next time.
Thank you.